the shining city on the hill.
It is the worst epidemic to strike the human race since the Black Death killed 1 in every 3 Europeans during the Middle Ages. Some 40 million people already test positive for the virus. While doctors and scientists race to find cures, millions will die, leaving behind orphaned children. Many will be homeless and abandoned. For them, there may be hope, the City of Hope. It is a joint project between the Reverend Billy Graham and this Jesuit who has spent years with the orphans of Kenya, the Reverend Angelo D'Agostino.
Dr. Father Reverend Angelo D'Agostino, welcome.
Thank you very
How
much.
serious is the problem of AIDS in Africa?
It's beyond the human imagination. It's taking in Kenya alone 1,000 people a day. In Africa, it's something like 8 or 10,000 a day dying. The worst part of it, though, tragic as that is the fact that they are each leaving at least one orphan. While they die, the orphans many times live. So that we can predict that in 10 years there will be, on the African continent alone, some 40 million orphans.
40 million?
40 million. Without any kind of protection, care, supervision, provision for survival. They'll be on their own, ravaging the countryside, trying to survive, getting into all sorts of criminal behavior probably, just to survive.
And generating perhaps other HIV-positive cases.
Exactly.
So then you have the multiplier effect.
Exactly.
When does the situation in Africa become ungovernable?
Well, we're getting close to it, I must say. We're losing people that are crucial to society. Policemen, teachers, government officials, farmers, businessmen, and the society is fraying already.
You live in Kenya. Tell us about what you have done in the Nyumbani orphanage.
I started about 10 years ago, quite by accident. I didn't plan it. I was on the board of a large orphanage, and they were admitting children who were HIV positive, and I suggested to them that they make special arrangements for them. But they weren't in a position to do so, so I rented a house, and together with a nurse and a social worker, we took in 3 children. Pretty soon there were a dozen. We moved to a larger location, and finally in 1995 we were able to, by grant, buy some land and started a little village, which is what Nyumbani is. Nyumbani means home, and it is indeed the home to all these children. Some of them come to us directly from the hospital, where the mothers have abandoned them, knowing that the mothers knowing that they would die because they're HIV positive, and leave the child in destitution in the slum, would hopefully would hope that the hospital would take care of them. But unfortunately they didn't. So we started with that nucleus and gradually grew to the present time where we have 76, which just was just a drop in the bucket.
How many acres do you have?
Right now we only have 2 acres.
And you have how many cottages?
10.
You are a medical professional, are you not?
Graduated from Tufts in 1949, medical school.
And you also have had training in psychoanalysis and psychiatry.
After I joined the Jesuit order, I had already been trained in surgery, but that wasn't particularly needed at the time. In 1955, when I joined, there was a war going on between theology and psychology, and I was advised to get involved in that, and so I retrained in psychiatry and been on the faculty at GW for many years, and then before I went to Africa.
You don't teach now?
I don't have any official teaching job, but as a matter of fact, I do. We have medical students that come through from the United States and from England, and I teach a course in pastoral counseling in a Jesuit seminary there, Nairobi.
You live in Nairobi?
Right in the heart of Nairobi. Yeah.
What is the HIV positive population in Kenya?
It varies in different parts of Kenya. Some parts it's close to 50%, the western part. Others not so much. It averages out to about 17 or 18%.
What country in Africa has the highest HIV positive, and what country is now being forecast to be the grimmest situation in the future?
Right now, the highest is Botswana, which is something like 33, 34%. But the future looks most bleak for South Africa, where something like 50% of the teenage population is already infected. So that whole generation will be wiped out.
Can Africa afford to pay for the cost of treating AIDS victims?
Not at all. I mean, the annual income for most people is less than $500. The AIDS medications cost, at least here in the United States, $10,000 a year. They've reduced the prices to some 3 or 4,000, but that still is very, very unaffordable to Africans. The only hope is to have the medicines actually manufactured, as they do in Brazil, and given to the people free, as they do in Brazil. But so far that has not happened, and the large drug companies of the world, I believe, will be held responsible for a crime even greater than Hitler's. Hitler only killed 7 million. They're killing at least 22 million by withholding, not making available these drugs for the 22 million people who...
How about generic drugs?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The generic drugs from Brazil, Thailand, India, would be able to stem the tide, but the international trade laws are preventing them from being imported.
What about the World Trade Organization? Isn't the WTO on your side?
Not really, not really. We still can't import them into Kenya. We passed, the law was passed, and the president signed it last June, but still the drugs are not available for a variety of reasons.
Is there a marked difference in the cost of a generic treatment, pharmaceutical treatment of AIDS, and non-generic?
The generic is about $350, $60 a year. The non-generic in Africa, about $600 or $700 a year.
Mm-hmm. You don't think you're unfairly scapegoating pharmaceutical companies, do you?
On the contrary, I think we're being used, and they say they're going to be held responsible someday.
What do you say to this argument? If the pharmaceutical companies are as tarnished by criticism as HMOs, it's inevitable that demand for prescription drug price controls will grow in America and elsewhere. When that happens, the pool of money that funds research and development, that pool that drips dollar by dollar out of every American's pocket when they pay for drugs at the pharmacy cash register, will dry up. When that pool goes dry, the industry will not be able to research, develop, test, and market new drugs. In consequence, we won't make new breakthroughs on AIDS or much else. So in attacking the industry as being greedy, are you being irresponsible and short-sighted?
Let's get the facts straight. The more important drugs in the battle against AIDS were developed not by the research company, but by NIH here in Washington, which is a product of our taxpayers' money, as well as a couple of other universities. Now, the NIH and the university don't do the marketing, so they sell the formula to the drug companies who then market it. I should say that the drug companies last year spent 4 times as much on advertising as they did on research.
Well, do they do any original research?
Now they do, but from what I can see, I don't know factually, but the fact is that they do research on the drugs that are profitable.
Have you tried to deal with the drug companies directly in the United States?
Well, they're representatives that are in Kenya, certainly.
How about the trade associations of the drug companies?
No, I haven't had any opportunity to do that.
Do you get any money from the government of Kenya?
Not at all.
Their total budget is around $9 billion for health.
I doubt it.
You doubt it?
I doubt it, yeah.
Do private private insurance play any role in your funding?
Not at all. In fact, it doesn't play much of a role in all of Kenya.
Um, we'll be right back. How did Billy and Franklin Graham come to be involved with a Jesuit priest and psychiatrist, Dr. Angelo D'Agostino, to build a 100-acre facility in Africa called the City of Hope? We'll put that question to our guest in just a moment. First, here is his distinguished profile.
Born Providence, 76 years of age, Jesuit priest. St. Michael's College, Vermont, B.S. Tufts University, M.D., Masters in Surgery. Rhode Island Hospital, surgical intern, 2 years. New England Center Hospital, Boston, residency, 4 years. U.S. Air Force Captain Chief of Urology, 2 years. Society of Jesus, sometimes called the Jesuits or the Jesuit Order, member since 1955, 47 years. Ordained Roman Catholic priest, 1966. Washington, D.C., Psychoanalytic Institute, 5 years. Georgetown and George Washington Universities and other hospitals and locations, physician of psychiatry and psychoanalysis, Washington on and off, 20 years all told, including Center for Psychiatry and Religion, Washington, founder, 1972. Refugee Processing Center, Thailand, chief, 1 year. Jesuit Refugee Service, East Africa, first coordinator, 2 years. Physician of Psychiatry and Psychoanalysis, Nairobi, Kenya, 3 years, including Center for Psychiatry and Religion, founder, 1990. Nyumbani Hospice, Orphanage and Community Outreach for HIV-Positive Children, Kenya. Founder and Medical Director, 10 years and currently. Awards, Tufts University Medical School Humanitarian Award, 1999. Angelo D'Agostino.
Dr. D'Agostino, tell us about the City of Hope.
Well, it all started back about 2.5, 3 years ago when I was a witness at the subcommittee on international relations headed up by Senator Frist. At that time, another witness was who gave testimony was Franklin Graham. And with him, or through him, developed a relationship with Senator Jesse Helms, who will be soon terminating his service to the Senate. And I really kept up a minimal relationship because I was an African. However, Franklin is now the head of a group called the Samaritan's Purse. Does much charity work in Africa. And I was invited to a conference that he supported, it pulled together about the end of February here in Washington. During the course of my remarks as one of the keynote speakers of that conference, I mentioned that one of the projects I was hoping to get off the ground was this Village of Hope. And it would cost us about $1 million to get it off the ground. We would hope to accommodate some 600 orphans and 300 or 400 of another very needy group, and that is the elderly, who are not supported. There's no such thing as Social Security in Africa. At any rate, when I finished my remarks, I ended by saying, our God is a God of compassion and hope and surprises. And after I sat down, he got up and got to the podium and said, I'll build it for you. So it's a strong, and I've talked with his assistant since then, and we're trying to work out a strategy. First, we have to acquire the land, either by gift or buying, and then start to set about constructing.
The president of Kenya is Daniel Arap Moi. Were you planning on going to him and requesting that the state of Kenya donate the land?
Not to him directly, but to one of the ministers, the minister of local government, who is in charge of lands. He was a neighbor of Nyumbani. He's very has been very kind to us. He's now the minister, as I say, but he's also the youngest son of the former president, the founder of the country, Jomo Kenyatta. And I think we'll be able to succeed with that.
Is Franklin Graham going to talk to Moy?
He promised that he would approach the government for the land, and if he couldn't get it, he would buy it.
Is it going to be self-sustaining?
We're asking for some 500 acres, which 4/5 would be devoted to agriculture to make it self-sustaining. Agriculture, poultry, dairy.
Handicraft?
Yeah, handicrafts, right.
You also said that the land is not donated, you'll buy it.
That's what he said. But I feel quite confident we'll be able to acquire it.
Is the City of Hope going to have the same kind of density as does Niumbani?
Well, I think in the sense of the actual living facilities, we've already been able to identify a living structure with 6 people. That is three double bedrooms, a bath, and living area for $5,000. It's a sealed structure and very serviceable. And we'll place these little cottages in modules.
Is there any way of creating the City of Hope in such a way that it could be replicated elsewhere?
That's the very point of our project, to make it a model for reproduction, not only in Kenya, but throughout the world.
Who do you see stepping in to possibly make that possible? International donors, private donors, African governments?
I doubt that African governments at this point could afford, but yeah, international donors, the World Bank, as a matter of fact, I'll be meeting with them next week, but private international corporations, multinational corporations.
Do you think that this is of such pressing public moment to the international community, especially the numbers that we spoke about earlier of orphans, that it is of paramount importance that something like City of God be multiplied throughout the continent?
There's no question in my mind that if something isn't done like that, there will be repercussions that will redound to the detriment of any northern or western hemisphere.
You mean the continent could almost implode? When you look at these numbers.
Not only implode, but explode in some ways to affect them by flight of people. Who knows? There are all sorts of dire possibilities.
What's the total number of orphans that you see developing as along the current demographic projections that will come into existence, orphans that who are afflicted with AIDS?
Oh, afflicted with AIDS may be 4 or 5 million, but the total number would be something like 40 million.
With adults and orphans?
No, just orphans.
Just orphans, 40 million?
Yeah, that's right, just orphans.
We'll be right back. Let's put on the screen the website that people can contact if they wish to get involved. www.niumbani.org. Niumbani, N-Y-U-M-B as in boy, A-N-I, niumbani.org. We'll put it up again at the end of the program. What about adoption of some of these children? Presumably going in if they're HIV positive. Of course, that's a hurdle that has to be overcome. But is it possible that the HIV positive children could later test negative?
It definitely is. Only the newborn, however. Newborn children who are positive are not necessarily infected. The positivity is a result of the test, which is a test for antibodies, and those antibodies come from the mother. After about a year or so, the mother's antibodies depleted, and the child is left on its own, If it is HIV positive, which is only 1 out of 4, it will remain positive. The other 3 turn negative. And we put them up for adoption. They're adopted very easily. We have 3 in U.S. right now, 3 in Holland, 1 in Ireland, 1 in Italy, and 2 in Dubai and various other countries.
Did you give testimony a couple of weeks ago
Right,
in the
the
Congress?
Hyde Committee.
Before the Hyde Committee.
Right.
What happened there?
Well, I presented the case for the need for help in building the City of Hope, and I think it was well received.
Are you going to get any money?
I believe so. It's going to be, of course, channeled through USAID, and I met with the director, Mr. Natsios, a few days ago, and I think we will.
Catholic Relief Services doing anything for you?
They are our partners. That is to say, the USAID channels the funding that we've received in the past through them, and we then go ahead with our program, which is not Niambani particularly, although they help a little bit there, but the larger community program. In Niambani, we only have 75 children or so. In the community, we have some 400. This is a different program altogether. These are street children who we identify as being HIV positive. We find some extended family member, relative, and convince them to take the child back. We provide the medicine, clothing, food for that child and any other children in the family. And that way, we're able to keep them in the community. But that community, I must say, is rapidly being frayed.
Angelo, you look good. I know you had serious heart surgery. And, you know, having known you when you were younger and growing up in the same city and going to the same school, I cannot tell you how proud I am to be your friend and how much I commend you for the life that you've been living.
Thank you very much, John. Pleasure.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.